In 1985, Microsoft shipped an operating system that could not overlap windows on screen. You could tile them side by side, but you could not stack one on top of another. It required 256 kilobytes of RAM and ran on top of MS-DOS because it was not actually an operating system at all. 40 years later, Microsoft ships an operating system that puts advertisements in your start menu, requires a trusted platform module chip soldered to your motherboard, forces a Microsoft account to complete installation, and bundles an AI assistant that watches everything you do on screen. This is the story of how we got from one to the other. Every version of Windows, ranked and roasted, from the first release that nobody wanted to, the latest release that still has not overtaken its own predecessor. The rise, the fall, and the bloat. The Foundation era, Windows 1.0 shipped on November 20th, 1985. It was not an operating system. It was a graphical shell that sat on top of MS-DOS. Everything still ran through DOS underneath. You got a mouse pointer, a few tiled windows, and applications like Notepad, calculator, and a clock. That was it. It sold about 500,000 copies total. For context, the Macintosh had already been on the market for a year with overlapping windows, a trash can, and drag and drop. Windows 2.0 in 1987 added overlapping windows. Finally, along with keyboard shortcuts and support for Word and Excel. Apple actually sued Microsoft over the overlapping windows, claiming it copied the Macintosh interface. The lawsuit dragged on for years, and Apple lost. But the real story starts with Windows 3.0 in 1990. This was Microsoft's first commercial hit. 4 million copies sold in the first year. It could address up to 16 megabytes of RAM, ran in protected mode on Intel 386 processors, and introduced Program Manager and File Manager. For the first time, a Windows PC felt like a real alternative to a Macintosh. Windows 3.1 in 1992 added TrueType fonts, multimedia support, and better stability. It also removed Real Mode, which meant it finally stopped pretending to run on ancient hardware. By 1993, 25 million licensed users were on Windows. The foundation was set. Verdict: rise. Slow, ugly, and limited. But Microsoft kept shipping and iterating when everyone said they should quit. The Golden Era. Windows 95 changed everything. Released August 24th, 1995. 1 million copies sold in 4 days. This is the version that gave you the start menu, the taskbar, the system tray, right-clicking, long file names, and plug-and-play hardware detection. The marketing campaign used the Rolling Stones song "Start Me Up" and cost Microsoft millions. It worked. Under the hood, 95 was the first 32-bit consumer Windows. It could preemptively multitask 32-bit applications, which meant programs could run in the background without freezing the entire system. But it still had 16-bit code deep inside, and it still crashed. A lot. Windows 98 in 1998 added better USB support, the FAT32 file system for larger hard drives, and shipped Internet Explorer bundled into the operating system. That last decision triggered the United States versus Microsoft antitrust trial, which found Microsoft had maintained its monopoly through anti-competitive practices. The Department of Justice wanted to break Microsoft into two companies. It did not happen, but the trial defined the tech industry for a decade. Windows ME Millennium Edition shipped in 2000. It was the last version of the consumer Windows line built on MS-DOS underneath. It was also widely considered the worst version of Windows ever made. Unstable, slow, that future was Windows NT, a completely separate operating system with a new kernel designed from scratch for stability and security. NT stood for New Technology, and it was built by Dave Cutler, who had previously designed VMS at Digital Equipment Corporation. Windows 2000 was the professional version of NT, rock solid, corporate, boring. It was what businesses ran while consumers suffered through Millennium Edition. Then, Windows XP unified the two lines, released October 25, 2001. XP was the NT kernel with a consumer face, stable, fast, compatible with most existing software. People loved it so much that it ran on hundreds of millions of machines for over a decade. Microsoft ended mainstream support in 2009 and extended support in 2014, 13 years after launch. Some ATMs and embedded systems still ran XP well into the 2020s. Verdict: rise, then peak. 95 created the modern PC experience. XP perfected it. This was peak Windows, the stumble era. Windows Vista shipped in January 2007 after 5 years of development. It was supposed to be revolutionary. It was a disaster. Vista introduced User Account Control, UAC, which popped up a permission dialog every time you tried to do anything administrative. Users hated it. Vista required dramatically more RAM and processing power than XP, which meant millions of existing PCs could not run it well. The driver model was completely rewritten, which meant printers, scanners, and other peripherals stopped working because manufacturers had not updated their drivers. Expert aside, Vista's driver rewrite was actually good engineering. The old XP driver model let third-party drivers run in kernel space, meaning a bad printer driver could crash your entire operating system. Vista moved most drivers to user space, which improved stability long-term. The problem was timing. Microsoft shipped the new model before hardware companies were ready. The technology was right, the execution was catastrophic. Vista sold reasonably well because it was pre-installed on new PCs, but the reputation damage was so severe that businesses skipped it entirely and stayed on X. The I'm a Mac advertising campaign from Apple targeted Vista specifically and drove a measurable spike in Macintosh sales. Then Windows 7 arrived in October 2009 and fixed everything. Same new driver model as Vista, but now manufacturers had caught up. UAC was tamed. Fewer prompts, smarter defaults. Boot times dropped, memory usage dropped. The taskbar was redesigned with pinnable application icons and thumbnail previews. It was the fastest-selling operating system in history. 240 million copies in the first year. 7 was not revolutionary. It was Vista done right, and that was exactly what people needed. Verdict: fall, then recovery. Vista was the biggest reputation disaster in Windows history. 7 proved Microsoft could still listen. The identity crisis. Windows 8 launched in October 2012 and made one of the most baffling design decisions in operating system history. It removed the Start menu. Instead, users got a full-screen start screen with large touch-friendly tiles designed for tablets. On a desktop with a mouse and keyboard, it was disorienting. The traditional desktop still existed, but you had to click through the tablet interface to reach it. There was no start button. There was no visual cue for how to get back to your programs. Users were lost in their own operating system. The engineering under the hood was actually solid. 8 booted significantly faster than 7 thanks to a hybrid shutdown that saved the kernel session to disk. It introduced the Microsoft Store, native USB 3.0 support, and better multi-monitor handling. The touch interface was genuinely good on a tablet. But Microsoft made a fatal strategic error. They assumed the future was touch-first computing and that desktops would follow tablets. The opposite happened. Tablets peaked and desktops stayed. Microsoft had optimized for a future that did not arrive. Windows 8.1 in 2013 brought back a start button and made the boot to desktop option available. It was an admission that 8 had overcorrected. But the damage was done. Businesses skipped 8 entirely, just like they had skipped Vista. The pattern was becoming predictable. Every other version of Windows was good. Verdict: fall. Microsoft bet the company on a touch future that never materialized. The Start menu debacle became a case study in ignoring your core audience. The subscription era. Windows 10 launched in July 2015 with a promise. This would be the last version of Windows. No more numbered releases. Windows would become a service, updated continuously forever. 10 brought back the Start menu. It introduced Cortana, the digital assistant. It added virtual desktops, a notification center, and the Edge browser as a replacement for Internet Explorer. It was good. Not spectacular, but good. Solid. The kind of release that made you forget the 8 disaster and just use your computer. But 10 also started a trend that would define the bloat era. Telemetry collection was aggressive and difficult to disable. Forced automatic updates caused problems. In 2018, an update deleted user files. Candy Crush and other promotional games appeared in the Start menu of a fresh installation. Bing web search results started appearing when you searched for local files. Then, Windows 11 arrived in October 2021. After promising 10 was the last version, Microsoft released a new version anyway. And this one came with requirements that millions of working PCs could not meet. TPM 2.0, Secure Boot, a compatible 64-bit processor with at least 2 cores. Perfectly functional computers became officially unsupported overnight. Expert aside, TPM, Trusted Platform Module, is a dedicated security chip that stores encryption keys, handles secure boot verification, and enables hardware-level authentication. Requiring TPM 2.0 is actually a strong security decision. It means Windows 11 can verify that the boot process has not been tampered with before the operating system even loads. The controversy is not the technology. It is that Microsoft made it mandatory on an operating system that people felt they were being forced to upgrade to. 11. Redesigned the interface with rounded corners, a centered taskbar, and a new settings app. But it also deepened every bloat trend from 10. Ads in the Start menu. Copilot AI integration pushed aggressively into the taskbar, Edge, Paint, and Settings. Recall, a feature that screenshots everything you do and indexes it with AI, generated a privacy backlash so severe that Microsoft delayed its launch. Edge became increasingly difficult to replace as the default browser. A Microsoft account became required during installation for home editions. As of 2026, Windows 10 still holds roughly 70% desktop market share. Windows 11 sits at roughly 26%, more than 4 years after launch. For comparison, Windows 7 had already surpassed Vista's market share within months of release. Users are not upgrading, they are holding on. The debloating community has exploded. Open source tools like Win11 Debloat, with over 40,000 stars on GitHub, exist solely to strip out the telemetry, ads, Copilot integration, and pre-installed applications that ship with every fresh install. When 40,000 developers build a tool specifically to undo your operating system's default experience, that is not a feature request. That is a verdict. Verdict: bloat. Windows 10 was the last good Windows. 11 is an operating system at war with its own users. Strong security engineering buried under advertising, forced AI integration, and an update treadmill that serves Microsoft more than the people using it. That is every major version of Windows, from a tiled shell on top of MS-DOS to an advertising platform with a kernel. The pattern is clear. 1.0 through 3.1 built the foundation. 95 through XP was the golden era. Vista was the disaster. 7 was the recovery. 8 was the identity crisis. 10 was the last good release. And 11 is the bloat era, where the operating system started serving Microsoft's business model instead of its users. Next up in the OS series, we are doing Mac OS versus Windows head-to-head. The $2,000 question nobody answers honestly, not features, not aesthetics, cold math on total cost of ownership, repairability, resale value, and productivity per dollar spent. You do not want to miss that one. Subscribe. Pseudo-bit logic is just getting started.